Week 1 is officially in the books for the UFL, and thus we have to rank the teams before we enter into discussions for Week 2. Let's waste no more time and dive right into it. Kicking things off with the Houston Gamblers, and that was a very rough showing they put out there on Saturday evening. Nolan Henderson did not play well in this game at all. The defense was a complete mess. Hunter Deckers eventually came in and proved that he should be the guy going forward, but it's just an all-around rough showing that can really only go up from here. They looked more like the 2024/beginning of last year Houston Roughnecks compared to the tail end of last season. Henderson threw 2 interceptions in the first 3 drives, with the other drive being a 3 and out. The pick 6 on the opening drive was a real sign of how this game was going to go for Houston. Deckers tried to salvage things, even having some pretty solid drives here and there, leading the team in rushing for this game as well. But by the time he was able to find his footing, it was really too little too late for this Houston team. Defense was a complete mess, not being able to stop anything through the air. They did play fine against the run, however. This could easily be a long season for Houston if they don't get things figured out quickly. But again, Hunter Deckers being the guy going forward should help with a few of those things, as a slow start like that is a massive reason why this game ended up being a bloodbath. But I do feel like Houston definitely has the chance, but they're going to have a tough opponent next week to be able to really bounce back. Number 7 is the Louisville Kings. Had some bright spots throughout that game. The defense played well. Jason Bean showed flashes. Would like to get the ground game a bit more involved and have it be a bit more impactful as a part of the offense. Still do feel good about what I saw. Bean ended up with 226 yards and a touchdown. Was it the most efficient game? No, he threw 2 interceptions. One of them, I would not blame him on. Zach Davidson bobbled that ball like it was a Looney Tunes cartoon. The second interception was him getting too greedy, trying to get it all in one play when that wasn't really the situation they found themselves in late. He had 52% completion, so again, not the greatest of showings, but definitely something that you can very easily build off of once he gets more chemistry with this receiver room. Defense kept him in this game despite the 3 turnovers they had, including a fumble on the goal line, which really shifted momentum in this game in favor of Birmingham. I think they'll bounce back just fine. There's enough that was shown on the field against a really good Birmingham defense to where I'm like, if they just get the right bounces in a future week, this is the same type of game that they would be able to win. So thus, I feel good about them going forward, even though they're at 7. There is a pretty big gap between Louisville at 7 and Houston at 8. On that same note about smaller gaps between teams, number 6 is the Dallas Renegades. And yes, they had an absolutely fantastic performance last week against Houston. It was against Houston. They handled business just fine. Austin Reed played fantastic, really proving me wrong about what I thought he would be able to do in the UFL. All around a fantastic game. I am excited to see how they handle their test next week against St. Louis. Austin Reed set a new single-game passing yard record in the UFL this week with 376 yards through the air. Had a massive game. Kind of needed to have a massive game because the ground game was doing very little in this one. Did not have their greatest of games. The defense set the tone early with the pick 6. And from there, it was just a more and more of an ass beating. They had the pick 6, followed by a beautiful 60-plus yard pass from Austin Reed to Tyler Vaughns, who Vaughns had himself an absolutely incredible game as well, just under 150 yards on the day. Part of me does want to put Dallas higher. They probably should be higher, but I need to see them be, consistent in this style of play, and 2, see them to have a very similar performance against a much better team. If they come out against St. Louis in week 2 on Tuesday night, and they're still able to throw the ball everywhere and have a massive game through the air and be able to pull off a win, they're going to shoot massively up these rankings. But for now, I'm going to be a little hesitant and just put them at 6. Number 5 is the Columbus Aviators, and watching that game kind of felt like I was watching a Jets or Browns game with how many times they shot themselves in the foot. 2 pick 6s were overturned due to penalties. One was offsides, one was 12 men on the field. A third pick 6 was dropped, and that drive eventually led to Orlando scoring and partly being the difference maker in this game. They had 4 drives that stalled out in the red zone and resulted in only 6 points. It was a very tough situation to have there happen. The final drive of the game, they wasted way too much time after a sack, and that was also pretty much all she wrote. These are things that could definitely be worked out throughout the season as Ted Ginn gets more experience being the head coach, and as this team gets built, continues to build chemistry with each other. So I'm still excited to see Columbus going forward, but man, that was a tough game to watch. McLennan had his moments. He played kind of fine. The ground game cleared 100 yards on the day. The defense kept him in it for as long as they can, and it gave him a chance in this one. There's not a lot to complain about in terms of specific performance wise. The only thing to complain about is the fact that they had those very costly minor errors, and that ended up being the difference in a 7-point game, in a game that they very easily could have won if simply one of those pick sixes actually happened. Or hell, if all three of them happened, we're talking about Columbus absolutely going belt to ass against Orlando to begin this season. But as the nature of things, I do expect this Columbus team to still be very competitive and to be in the running for the playoffs. I do wish we got this matchup once more in the regular season, but that's not how the schedule is shaping up. So the Aviators come in at 5. Number 4 is the Orlando Storm. A solid win on their opener. They played decently well throughout this game. Nothing too spectacular. They let Columbus hang around just a bit towards the end, despite the multitude of drives that got extended for them and the amount of lucky breaks they got. Jack Plummer missed a few throws here and there. He had that wide open touchdown he put a little bit too much into. But for the most part, he had a pretty effective game. The ground game was also a factor in this one. Jayshon Corbin had himself a good night with 2 touchdowns in this one. Again, they got lucky at times, taking advantage of Columbus shooting themselves in the foot, but you're going to be getting those breaks. And it also does show to the fact that Orlando was the better coached team in this game. They were not making the same mental errors that Columbus was making. It didn't take a lot of unnecessary penalties throughout this game. They were simply playing solid and clean football because Anthony Beck knew that he was the biggest advantage Orlando had in this game going against a first-time head coach. I like to see that from Orlando. I do think coaches could be a big reason why they are competitive throughout the entire season and be in contention for the playoffs. They sit at 1-0 to begin the season. I would like a bit more explosiveness from the offense, but again, if you can keep building off these solid wins thanks to good coaching, you're going to be just fine in the league, at least this first season where there's a ton of first-time head coaches. So I do expect Orlando to be one of those teams that is right there for the playoffs and competitive till the very end. Number 3 is the DC Defenders, and I don't think I've seen a more disappointing Week 1 game in my entirety of watching professional football. These are the defending champs, and they came out there looking very rough. Jordan Ta'amu was off the mark throughout most of this game. They couldn't score for 3/4 of this game. The defense held up as much as they could, but eventually, with the offensive performance that they got, it was going to be too much to be able to maintain. Ta'amu ended with only 123 yards on this day and 2 interceptions, while he was sacked 7 times in this one. The ground game got up to a 73 yards on the day with this one, which is just meh all around. They couldn't get certain receivers involved despite the amount of talent that's in that receiver room. They just could not get guys involved. Defense played well and is going to be continuing to play well throughout the majority of this season, even with some of the extra stuff that happened towards the end of that game. I do expect that to be worked out, but it's going to be interesting to see how they rally behind that going forward, because you can tell that every single person on that DC sideline, coaches, players, everyone was massively disappointed with how they played in this game and how they shaked up against St. Louis. So I feel bad for whoever plays them next week, but this should still be a very fun DC team going forward. I expect the issues to be worked out. I trust this coaching staff for at least another week to be able to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's still early on in the season. There's going to be a few hiccups. I do expect them to bounce back. They come in at number 3. Number 2 is the Birmingham Stallions. Not a great performance, but still one you can easily build off of going forward. Corral played fine, as did most of the offense. They're able to move the ball pretty consistently. They just couldn't quite finish drives consistently. Defense bent, but never really did break in this one. They're able to hold on towards the end there and get that win. They forced 3 turnovers in this game. Corral threw for just over 200 yards on a good, efficient day. Ground game as a whole did what you would want from them, about 3 yards per carry. Jaden Mickens had himself a fantastic game with over 100 yards, being the main option for Matt Corral in this one. The defense shut down the Kings' ground game, only allowing 46 yards through the ground. They forced a goal line fumble, which massively shifted momentum in this game. It was a really solid game and a clean game for Birmingham. Adrian McCarron had these guys ready to play, and that was extremely impressive. Seems like the only player that missed the memo on Week 1 was their kicker. That's going to be interesting to see how they handle that going forward. As of the time of recording this, no news on that, but I do expect something to be announced in the coming days for them getting the new kicker, or at least some competition in this week of practice. For Birmingham, they went out there week 1, showed they were the experienced team and why that they have been a real threat in spring football for the past few years. Really fun showing. They move up to number 2. And number 1, the St. Louis Battlehawks. Very impressive win to kick off the season. They took down the defending champs. Brandon Silvers did start off a bit slow in this game, as did the entire Battlehawks team through the first half. But the second half, they were really able to turn things around quickly, and they're able to mount that comeback. Silvers just missed 200 yards on the day, whereas the ground game was near non-existent in this one. The resilience was nice to see, but they were clearly missing someone like an Akeem Butler to be that big receiving option. Hopefully, he will be back soon for this Battlehawks team. The defense was all over the place, making plays in this game. 2 interceptions, a franchise-high 7 sacks in this one. Going to be exciting to see how they build off of this performance, as they have a very nice game on Tuesday coming up next week, playing against a high-powered Dallas offense. That should be a great way to wrap up week 2. But for now, as we enter week 2, the St. Louis Battlehawks, by taking down the defending champs, shoot up all the way to number 1 on the rankings. Alright, so quick little rundown. The Houston Gamblers are at 8, Louisville Kings at 7, Dallas Renegades at 6, Columbus Aviators at 5, Orlando Storm at 4, the DC Defenders at 3, Birmingham Stallions at 2, and the St. Louis Battlehawks round things out at number 1. I appreciate everyone tuning in. We are close to 600 subscribers, so subscribe would be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you all next time. Have yourselves a damn good one. Peace.